Lost Ark, an MMOARPG originally released in Korea in 2019, has finally made its release to the wider community. And on February 11th, players from both North America and Europe were given the chance to dive into this fantasy action role-playing game. With both a starving MMO fanbase, as well as various concerns over its monetization model, today we took a look at Lost Ark, and if this is a game that's truly worth your time, or yet another unfortunate casualty of contemporary pre-launch hype. I'm Mitch Mannix, and this is Lost Ark, First Impressions in 2022. Lost Ark on its Western release gives players a choice between 5 classes, each with a unique subclass to choose from, and from reports it seems the developers plan to release more over the first few months of its re-release. The martial artist as well as the gunner are available to pick in both genders, and it would have been nice to see this option for the rest of the classes, since they were already going to the trouble of providing both. Right out the gate, Lost Ark's character creator follows a very typical trend for Korean MMOs, with a large range of customization options that you can use to craft your desired hero/underwear model. Hair options in particular ranging from majestic to fabulous, and with beards ranging from barely bum fluff to full-blown bagpipe spectacular. With my unavoidably catwalk-ready berserker confirmed, we get the first look into some of the lore in the introductory story.
Land of frost. Everything was frozen in Shoeshire through the power of Sirius.
A pillar of light.
Come back, you crazy old man!
I'm sorry, what? With our backstory of a champion of the arena told, we set off and set sail to the game proper, and get our first glimpse of some of Lost Ark's beautiful visuals. Upon docking, Sir Barrington struts into the land and begins taking off a series of introductory quests, playing through some of the core mechanics, as well as getting a chance to smack some heads. I have to say the art style I have mixed feelings about. The world and enemy design is great, as well as the armor and weapons, but I've never really been able to buy into the everyone is strikingly attractive theme, as in some ways takes away from any feeling of personality and charm with created heroes. However, this may be purely down to an average-looking British man's inability to relate to a character that looks like he should be pouting in a billboard somewhere. Working through the prologue missions we are greeted with, they go a long way to not only showing off just how beautiful this game's visuals are, but also that new players can expect to be treated to a fairly cinematic experience when progressing through the game's story. A story that is told in a highly epic and sometimes laughably stereotypical fashion.
Destiny calls to you, O chosen one.
Wait, what? During my 20 or so hours through level 30 and 20 with 2 characters, I have to say that the story itself is not what I'd call Lost Ark's strong suit. The characters don't really have anything gripping about them, and I even found myself mixing 2 of the main players up from time to time, as they also look quite similar. Without going into too much detail, there's a lot of
"You win this time, but just you wait till we meet again"
moments that also feel like they're ripped straight out of a TV series, with the antagonist literally pacing around and then buggering off through a portal. The in-game cutscenes are also great for the most part, with some crazy, very anime-feeling encounters, but also some more confusing choices in dialogue, leading to some unintentionally humorous moments, for me at least.
I'll leave it to you.
You go that way. I'll go home.
For the most part, although as corny as can be, the story has done enough at least to frame the leveling experience and give some lore and insight into Lost Ark's world. With the prologue over, I was placed into one of the game's many towns, and instantly bombarded with not only a mountain of tutorials and tooltips, but also provided with my first pet, to add to the sea of others now running around with cats that sound like squeaky rocking chairs. Lost Ark clearly goes a long way to giving new players information in its many, many different facets, and I would much rather have too much information in a game like this than not enough, as closing down a menu explaining something I had already figured out takes far less time than banging my head against something that's not explained properly. Pets, like a lot of smaller elements in Lost Ark, have their own features. Pets can not only provide buffs to the player, but also allow for storage and picking up items.
Oh, Greg?
Working my way through the leveling zones, ticking off main and side quests, it has to be said that Lost Ark does very well at providing a wide range of alternative zones and environments. Barren deserts leading to lush forest areas, snowy peaks to gothic-looking castles and cities, The pace in which leveling players path from interesting place to place adds to the feeling of just wanting to play another hour just to see the zone over the horizon. Questing itself is what many may have come to expect with an MMOARPG, but Lost Ark does not really bring anything new or interesting to the table when it comes to leveling through its early zones. Fetch and kill quests mixed in with some more randomized zone quests usually centered around killing a number of certain enemy type can become a bit of a grind, especially if not gripped by the story wrapping it all together. Where things start to spice up, however, is during the game's dungeons. 4-player instanced journeys through easily some of the most visually impressive locations I've seen in an MMOARPG. With Holy Trinity format of 2 DPS, a tank and a healer, Dungeons and Lost Ark are great fun, and are a great tool to keep things going through its more mundane leveling content, with additional quests available, as well as adding to the game's story. Although not the most challenging, I could hardly switch off doing some of the game's dungeon boss fights, and with increased difficulty available, this content, especially with a few friends, almost by itself justifies taking a look at the game, especially since it's free to play. I was left wondering why some of the crazy set pieces seen in the group activities were not reflected in the single player, and as you'll see from a little later in the video, I got my answer alright. When it comes to the buzz around Lost Ark, a lot could be said for its potential players being drawn in by its bombastic looking combat system, and from my time with the game so far, it has stood up as being one of the game's best features. It feels great smashing through whole groups of foes, launching them into the air and crashing down into epic looking combos. It's easy with a style so exaggerated for things to feel a little bit video gamey, for want of a better expression. But with my time with the warrior as well as the assassin, hits feel impactful and satisfying. The combat system itself feels like what Diablo 3 should have reached for, with a similar system of augmenting unlocked attacks, but with far more depth and customization options. Each class has 8 abilities to use and swap out, plus an ultimate ability to charge up and unleash on enemies. It took for me, as someone who does not play a lot of RPGs where dismantling whole platoons worth of enemies at once in a single attack is commonplace, a little time to come around. But when it clicked, it felt great. And it almost justifies the need to have weapons so insanely oversized. Some crazy cool looking visual effects, coupled with the visceral combat sounds, reinforce why, in the Western marketing for the game at least, combat was almost an exclusive focus. Even while taking off quite uninteresting fetch and kill quests, I got great entertainment tuning out my build for a new ability, and coming up with my own combos to pull off moves that look utterly insane, yet gloriously satisfying. Certain skills coupled with the dodge ability adds to the pace of encounters, with bosses and more challenging enemies, with some attacks being granted extra damage from hitting a particular side, making positioning a factor. All this making up to the game's combat feel like you're not just simply planting yourself and pressing buttons to victory. Gearing is quite typical in games of this type, with small incremental upgrades dished out for quests, dungeon rewards, as well as rarer random drops. The animation for each class's combat is very well produced, and gives the feeling of impact, as well as a nice dose of cool factor to encounters. The same which unfortunately can't be said for some of the NPCs, that can clash with spoken dialogue with some really goofy animations. I want to go to SeaWorld. We're not going to SeaWorld. No, I want to go to SeaWorld. Not going to SeaWorld. One more unique string in Lost Ark's bow is the addition of crafting and gathering professions. Logging, foraging, mining, as well as less expected additions such as hunting and excavating, all with their own progression via leveling, as well as tiers of tools associated, again, were all well explained and add to the options players have while adventuring across the game's landscapes. Since skills like these are rarely seen in ARPGs, the trade skills do give the game some more of an MMO feel over games such as Path of Exile or Diablo, and later down the line breathe life once again with their integration with the Stronghold system. Your Stronghold being a player-owned island that is customizable and upgradable, with a wide variety of cosmetics as well as functional buildings. Permanent player buffs, acquiring gear and upgrade components, as well as the ability to craft items are only a few of the functions provided by Strongholds. And unlike World of Warcraft's poorly received garrison system, looks to add an interesting and useful place to both spice up the game with variety, as well as assist in the late game activities. Of course, with the ability to farm for and customize your Stronghold, there's also a place for fans of player housing found in other MMOs to flex their creativity. Staff can be hired too to feature alongside the island's quirky inhabitants that range from the hilariously over-sexualized butler all the way down to straight-up nightmare fuel.
Let's welcome our lord together.
Oh god, please don't.
1,
No.
2,
Ah,
3.
don't do it. I mentioned before about set pieces in the dungeon content, and how I wish that more of that could be seen in the main storyline. And I could only wish, as I continued grinding through another fetch quest, well, as if the game itself had heard me, not an hour later, this happened.
Please hurry. The battering rams are leaving soon.
This battle scene blew my f***ing mind. It is one of the most impressive set pieces I've ever played in an ARPG, let alone a massively multiplayer one. Insane amounts of forces on screen, Michael Bay style slow-mo, as well as a fantastically epic scale. This section of the game made me so interested to see what the developers are capable of, and what kind of content could await me in the later stages of the game. It even had an insanely over-the-top cutscene, as if a cherry on the top.
I am the leader Lutera deserves. It's mine!
I'm the video game boy. I'm the one who wins.
I won't be showing any of the major story plot points, but the execution here of both this battle, as well as the action following on from it, piqued my interest to an all-time high, whilst playing through roughly 20 hours of the early game. And hell, being free to play, I would have downloaded the game just to get a chance to play through this. Other encounters in the game, don't get me wrong, are grand, and come with a very anime-style bombast to it. But as far as first impressions go, I would be looking out for more moments like this. When it comes to free-to-play games, or any multiplayer games at all, as depressing as that is, a hot topic centers around its choices with monetization. Is the game going to squeeze its players for cash with predatory penalties for non-subscribers? Will all the content be available in the game? And the most notable question of them all, and the one that has an increasingly shifting definition, is it pay to win? From my research, that is a complicated answer of Lost Ark, and it'll be down to where you draw the line when it comes to purchasable content. Cosmetics, like with virtually every free-to-play game, will have exclusive content sold for a premium, and it'll be down to the individual to choose to purchase them or not. Developers and publishers of these games need to make their dollar bills somewhere, so if you're looking for everything to be available in the game, then unfortunately, only a time machine will be able to assist you at this point. Where real concerns arise, however, is when the late game progression is intrinsically linked to monetized services. With Lost Ark, for the most part, you're purchasing time. Time it would take to farm a load of resources or upgrade materials. Time it would take to level or obtain golds for the market system. There are 4 different currencies in the game, and 3 of which are obtainable in-game. PvP stats are baseline to create more of an even playing field, but I for one have never really been a fan of the RNG-centric upgrade system found in other Korean MMOs such as Black Desert Online or Blessed Unleashed, as they can quickly become systems that penalize someone purely on a dice roll and to sweeten the prospect of paying for more chances via microtransactions. Will this spoil the player's leveling experience through the game? No, but it will be a divisive factor for those that make it to late game, and I do not want anyone going into the game with the wrong impression. To be blunt, can you pay money to get more upgrade chances on top of those earned in-game, and with it increasing your power? Yes. Would 2 people who spend the same amount of time gearing their character, but one of them spends $100, have the same power level? No. Those 2 points, unfortunately with Lost Ark, as with many Korean MMOs, is simply irrefutable. But it would be down to you if this turns you away from the game. Now, both the definition of pay to win as well as the impact on you and the type of player you are will be subjective. The big one, upgrade materials, can be obtained in the game, but paying will speed up the upgrade and with it the gearing process. Since it's such a divisive topic, I'd recommend taking a look at the various focused breakdowns of the late game monetization systems if this is something you think will be a deal breaker before picking up the game. After 20 hours of play across 2 of the game's classes, Lost Ark has surpassed my expectations. The game runs incredibly well. I played on an RTX 3080 and a 9700K at 3440 by 1440 outside of recording, and rarely saw dips under 120 frames per second. The game's art style with oversized weapons, L'Oreal advert hairstyles, and scantily clad female heroes isn't really my sort of thing. However, it's easy to overlook its sometimes a bit weird quirks when the world itself looks so damn good. Constantly shifting zone designs and some absolutely jaw-dropping set pieces makes Lost Ark, along with its great feeling combat, a worthwhile experience for ARPG fans, especially with its no-cost price of entry. For fans of the more traditional MMO, the story falls flat, at least in the early hours, when stacked up to its competition, and questing can feel very bland running from NPC to NPC with very little in between. However, systems such as the trade skills, as well as a highly addicting stronghold system, does bring elements that pad out the experience, and could give those looking for a new MMO adventure enough to keep them busy for many, many hours. Since the game's been out for a few years, it's nice not to have to battle through various bugs and glitches, and I have to say, this one is a title that I feel I will be returning to. If the ARPG combat is a deal breaker, then give this one a miss. But for those that don't mind the shift, then Lost Ark has some really worthwhile content on offer. Thank you so much for watching. Please give the video a like if you think it deserved it, and let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And I'll see you guys in the next video.
The bandit, but he was following all these just
Brilliant.